in terms of what we're doing, we try and have as most inclusive and open recruitment process anyway. It's not perfect. So we try and do that as much as possible. We have a lot of internal training for both recruiters and our interviewers population to remove sort of any of our biases, as well as part of the recruitment process, you will have a panel interview at the end of it, right? And within that, we have what we call a bar raiser. So that bar raiser is somebody sort of impartial, not from the business area, maybe that you're interviewing for, typically somewhere different, but has gone through extra training to basically make sure that we have no biases, we're calling out the right things, we're not basing it off, well, I didn't like that person's personality. It's actually concrete, definitive feedback that we have decided is maybe not coachable, or is too big of a red flag, or there's too many small things that build up. So I think that's the first one of the things that we try to build into the actual recruitment process. In terms of the variety of the sort of what we've done to help people transitioning into this, I think first of all we have a really wide range of training and support available. Our recruitment process, the way it's set up is to, as I think what somebody else mentioned, is based on our leadership principles. So every role will have certain key leadership principles, which we need people to display through competency-based questions. So tell me a time when, give an example of, and then we'll ask more probing questions into that. What that enables us to do is we're not always looking at can you do this job? It's are you an Amazonian, as we call it, which a little bit cringe perhaps, but really, are you an Amazonian? Are you somebody who we can see both doing this role but fitting into the organization, and also somebody who is able to progress in the organization as well? We want people who can come in and continue evolving, learning, changing. Progression doesn't always mean upward. It can be development into other roles. It can be moving into different areas. So we really try to do that. An example of the training that we give in our last mile delivery business, which is the business supports getting the packages to your house. They go from the warehouse to the van, and then someone presses the doorbell. Every manager on a recurring basis in that environment has 50 hours of mandatory training a year. A lot of it's based around sort of safety and things like that, and keeping people safe in the operation. But there's 50 hours, an hour a week essentially, of people who dedicate to kind of learning and training. So if we have somebody who comes from So sorry, that's one area. I think the other area is, when people start, we always have a training program for them. It's different in different teams in different areas, but there is always a training program in place. There's something, we have a program called Embark, which is kind of, week 1 do this, week 2 do that, and it gets checked off. And there's a lot of variety in that, both sort of online trainings, meeting people, discussing things with people. In some areas, we have even more specific training. So we have a 12-week academy program, which, in our operations business at least, teaches people from sort of everything they need to know. And I think when we combine the way we hire based on the leadership principles, and people exhibit those leadership principles, we can teach you a lot of the functional stuff, right? We can teach people a lot of that functional thing. The challenge is your behaviors and how you work, how you think, how you operate. So if we can teach you the functional bit of how we've set up this big, massive global company, we are then able to adapt and help you adapt and upskill and get the support that you need and the right resources to be able to actually just do the job. And those leadership principles are the core things that are going to be, for any role moving internally, externally. That's what's really going to help us understand if you are going to be successful at Amazon and then successful in a certain role, because certain roles will test or assess different ones. So that's definitely something we do. I think in terms of additional support, I think AI is helping a lot. So as an example, Amazon has a very specific way of writing style. So we now have an AI tool where if you write a document, let's say you're pretty new, you write your first document, you can put that document into there, and it will say, this is what's the strength of it, this is areas where you can improve on it, to make it an Amazonian document, because we understand that we do things in quite a unique way in certain areas. Not everywhere, some stuff is pretty normal, but a lot of those different tools can help people upskill and change and learn the Amazon way, which not always right, and we're always open to learning new ways and hearing from people about it and innovating, but it helps people transition, in general. So if you're transitioning from a different area, a completely new area, but you have those core skills, there's a lot of tools there, hopefully, that can enable people to be able to make a successful transition. So I think I hope that answers the question. I felt like it was a bit wordy there, but
could you go into the detail of what is an Amazonian? Because I think that will answer Monica's question about what are the generic transferable skills that you're looking for. What are these sort of leadership principles that you're trying to assess?
Leadership principles are often known as LPs. So they're basically core sort of mission statements of how we work, right? They describe how we do business, how we lead, how we keep the customer at the center of our decisions, and they sort of create our culture, which I know somebody else asked about the question on the culture. We want to be, as a mission statement, Earth's most customer-centric company, best employer, and safest place to work, right? So that's what they all entail. I think there's 16 of them now. There's a few newer ones added. And actually, I'm happy to share a link after this where you can watch Andy Jassy, the leader of Amazon. He sort of tells you what these leadership principles mean to him, along with a bit of an explanation of what each one is, and that's really what we're looking to see in the answers that people give us at the interview process, right? Customer obsession. So it is one of our biggest ones, and we start with a customer and we work backwards. And that customer doesn't always mean you and me who's buying off Amazon. It might mean our internal customer, one of our internal stakeholders, the people that we provide support to. Recruitment are some of our biggest customers, are our business stakeholders, right? So we work from them. What do they need? What do they want? Can we advise them a little bit on that in that relationship? Of course, but we have to work to try and earn and keep their trust, and we really focus on what they need and what they need from us. So that is one as an example, right? But these leadership principles, they really are what guide a lot of our decisions, how we do things, and how we make sure that we keep that culture. And so, yeah, I think that hopefully gives you the insight onto them. I don't want to waste not waste. I don't want to spend all the time of the session just reading them all out and telling you all about them. But they're definitely, how everything that I see at Amazon is guided.
Yeah. Did you want to clarify something, Stuart?
Yeah, it's one specific question. Amazon is a huge organization, Grant, and it's many companies. Okay, I mean, you only have to see how many different versions of AI you've got, whether it's Q, Lex, Rufus, or whether you're building it through SageMaker on AWS. Yeah, which area of Amazon are you representing? Which business?
So for me, I represent the Amazon, as we call it, the stores team. So that would be the Amazon that you think of. But I think talking about like leadership principles and the recruitment process, that is across all of Amazon, right? There is definitely differences of what we test and exactly how the process works from a recruitment standpoint, between different businesses, what they need. Software developers are going to have a sort of an assessment and test, right? Certain roles have different nuances that we sort of review in slightly different ways. But leadership principles is a global, every Amazon thing. So the operations, what you think of is really the first mile, middle mile, last mile. So without boring you too much, first mile, biggest warehouses where the products come from our suppliers. Middle mile is getting it from that big warehouse to the smaller delivery station, which then gets put onto the van, puts a package with you. Within that, there is a lot of other different businesses, and there is, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who all work in those areas. But that's what I do across all of Europe.
Brilliant. And Tom, you've got something to clarify as well.
I was just interested. The leadership principles seem to be critically important from a recruiting perspective across the whole of Amazon, but there isn't the recruiting process. You upload a CV, there's no option to upload anything else, so there's not a document you could write a letter as to why you were suited to that, way you could get across what your own principles are. So in the first instance, you've got to get, if the principles are so important, your system is having to get that from your CV, and a CV is a different sort of document. So
yeah, good question.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, did you want to go to that, Grant?
We can, or we can go to a different one. But yeah, I think one thing that we have at Amazon, you apply every application. There's no filtering out by an automatic system. You're only filtered out by a human. So I don't deal day to day with the requisitions as much anymore, but every application is listed and every person is reviewed. And if it isn't reviewed within a certain timeline, we have metrics and stuff like that for that. So I think the initial screening from the CV is really based a little bit closer on functional experience and functional competencies. So, if you're making a career change, that can be slightly more challenging. So, if you're making that career change, I always would advise people to really focus on what are the transferable skills based on the job description. And if you notice, a lot of our job descriptions are the basic qualifications are usually not particularly extensive, because we want as wide a pool of people to be able to apply and we'd be able to review them and try and spot those people who maybe have those transferable skills. That is something we definitely can get better at and definitely improve on, because, I think there is a mentality with definitely people out there and our hiring managers sometimes where I want somebody who's done this before, can do it, and is going to come in and know what we're talking about from day one. But that isn't a universal piece, and it's our job as talent acquisition to try and influence that mindset and change that mindset.
You have a career change program already, don't you?
The program we've got at the minute is it's a returners program. So it's a program that is really focusing on people who've been out of the workforce for 18 months or more. So that program then allows people to apply to us. They join us on a 6-month fixed-term contract. There's a sort of a range of areas that we're looking at. So we've opened it a bit wider than saying it's this job. It's a corporate role within these 8 sort of areas. Once we've spoken to people and they've had their interviews, we're then going to we're going back to them with this is where we think you'd be a good fit based on your interview feedback, based on your CV, based on you telling us what you wanted to do and the areas you're interested in. So that can then hopefully start expanding that. And that also comes with career changes, right? If you've worked in the food and beverage industry all your life as a project manager, we view that as, well, you could be a project manager within AWS because you have those core project manager skills, right? So that's the kind of mindset we're trying to get to, and we're looking to expand it. We've done a little bit of in our retail business as well. So that's another area we've done it. And I know that I had a call a couple of weeks ago with AWS where they were looking to implement, again, a similar program to target people who've been out of the workforce. Typically, it's because of either caring reasons, whether that's an older relative or children of some description, but the variety of reasons we've seen of people why they've had a break is gigantic. So we again see it as an untapped talent source that we probably would have discounted previously. You know, being completely truthful, right? You know, if someone's been out of work for 5 years, often as a recruitment team, as a generalization, and even as hiring managers, people will be a little bit more apprehensive about that. You know, if people are taking some time out to do some additional training and skills or upskilling, and that's why they're taking it, that's again another valid reason, and we can try and help with that transition. So that's the program that's running at the moment.
And what about current recruitment needs? I mean, if people are sort of inspired by what they hear now, is there anything that you've got open at the moment?
So we still have some availability for our sort of operations logistics career returners program. So we have got some people in process, but we similarly, this is a very Amazonian thing to say, but looking at the funnel metrics of how many people we have in process and how many people typically convert from each stage, we probably could still have a few more applications in that. I think the other thing is that we have something like in the UK over 900 open roles at the moment at various levels in various different areas and businesses. Stuart, to your point before, there is a multitude of Amazon businesses. I still don't know them all. Still don't understand what all of them do, quite honestly. But that's how many roles are open. So I would always, and every application has to go through the Amazon Jobs website. So I would always advocate people to use that mechanism. Now, I think we all know that if we are just relying on applying on websites to get that dream job, it's not always as simple as that. So there's a ton of roles out there. So I would always encourage people to try and connect with the hiring managers on there. You know, LinkedIn is obviously a great tool with that. And try and kind of say, hey, I've applied for this role, but I'd be interested in learning a bit more. Also, you can do the same with the recruiters on those roles. Anyone on the call, if you see a role and you're interested, again, I'm happy to share my contact details. You can send it to me. I can flag it and explain a little bit more, perhaps, you know, around the organization and the community you're part of. And you know, try and add some more influence that way. But everything will be screened. If I'm going to be completely honest, if you have never been a software developer and have no software development skills, it's unlikely that if you apply for a software development role, you're going to get it, right? But there is a lot more transferable skills in a lot of other areas. So I think that's something that, you know, we want to focus on. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Can we get that question dealt with, the one about the ATS? Because I do think there are some concerns about the ATS and people feeling they've probably tried or have potentially looked at it before. Particularly some of the questions imply that they've at least looked at it. So Trevor's question around why isn't there any salary indication? So I think possibly you've got some people in this audience who might have tried using your ATS system before.
Yeah, and anyone before I go into it, feel free to shout out with your experience, etc. Of it. We always look for feedback on everything. So so I think in terms of the ATS in general, as I said, there's no AI or system that is screening people. There's nothing like that happens. Anything we use with AI at Amazon, we have a pretty hard rule that we don't let it make decisions for us. It can inform our decisions, but especially in recruitment, we're never allowing it to say a candidate is right or not, or a candidate will be successful or not. So we don't let it make any final decisions, and we don't have any system saying yes or no to people.
Okay, so at the moment, just to clarify, you still have to apply. It is an applicant tracking system, but there are humans that will be screening. And the best way or your advice really, or the best thing to do in terms of putting that best foot forward, would be also get in touch with the hiring manager. And maybe also get in touch with you and say, hey,
yeah,
Grant,
absolutely.
Okay, all right, you might live to regret that, Grant, but
maybe I don't know, but look, I can always direct people to the right place.
Yeah.
We'll provide any insight and support. So yeah, I think that's always going to be key. Is building those connections. So I think there's no automated, you know. Sorry, Grant, we don't like the look of your CV. We're not even going to bother sending it to the recruiter.
Okay. All right. Could we also
The salary one, right?
About the salary,
The
yeah.
big one. I think the interesting one with the salary is probably something that all recruiters would say is my initial answer, which is we want to know what you're looking for, because as much as companies have salary bands, there's always exceptions to it. There's always opportunity to make it fit for the person, right? My view on compensation, etc., now that I'm working for a company, is that I want to get you the best possible salary we can, that you're happy with. So that's often why we do it. And I think the reason why we don't want to do it is we don't want to put off people applying if they see, you know, somebody's looking for a salary, the salary is 50k, but actually I'm looking for 55. Well, maybe we can do that if you're the right person for the role. Can we get an exception for that? Because actually the hiring manager loves you and thinks you can add so much value to the team. So I think that's often, a lot of companies don't put it on there. You know, we really want to know, what are you looking for? I'm never, and I don't think anybody at Amazon really asks, what were you making previously? And I think that question is pretty much gone from most recruiters I know's vocabulary, shall we say. Maybe not so much on the agency side. But you know, for me, I always look to make sure we can get the right offer for people that they're happy with and comfortable with. In terms of why it's not on there, I think it's more from a business decision. We want to get as wide a group of applicants as possible, and having salary bands on there, I think the data that I've seen has shown that it can put people off. Whether that's actually, and even sometimes when it's too high, people think, well, that's a lot of money, or maybe I'm not going to be good enough for that role, I won't bother applying. So it's not always about, you know, people being over the band. It sometimes can be actually off-putting for people that, you know, well, actually, maybe I'm not worth that much, so I won't apply for that. So that's, I think, the other reason. But the first call you'll have will be a recruiter, and they'll be able to give you the salary ranges. There's no cloak and dagger of, well, what are you looking for? I can't tell you the ranges until the very end or anything like that. You know, we want to know up front if we can have that. And the best scenario is you say, I'm looking for X number, and we say we can do it or we can't. And if we can't do it, you know, or it's going to take an exception, we'll let you know that, and we'll try and set your expectations accordingly, that, hey, that isn't going to be possible. You know, maybe look at the next level up. Maybe that's better suited to your experience, that kind of thing.
Last question, I just think, for the recording, and then Stuart, I'll come to you. And it was to cover off that question about what's the culture like at Amazon.
Yeah, I think culture is always an interesting one for me, because I think the people in it make the culture, right? So the more diverse people you have, and that can be gender, it could be ethnicity, it can be age, whatever. That's what creates your culture. I think the Amazon culture is very much guided by those leadership principles, which I hate to keep referring to, but that is really how we do a lot of it. I think from my experience, different teams within Amazon have different cultures. To Stuart's point before, Amazon is gigantic, so it's not the same everywhere, and different countries have it as well. But I think I've always found it a very supportive and well-intentioned culture. There's a lot of demands, and people are expected to do a good job. But if you're struggling and ask for support, no one ever says, actually, you know, no, you've got to figure it out on your own. You know, I've never kind of seen or heard of that or experienced it. I think everyone is supportive, and if something does goes wrong, it's okay, how do we fix it? Not, I can't believe it went wrong, why did you do it that way, that's so bad. It's a, how do we fix it? How do we improve it? What learnings can we take to make this better? You know, there's tons of areas of Amazon that have failed. You know, businesses have been launched that just didn't work. It's not, it's why didn't that work, but not, I can't believe that didn't work, we're going to fire you, you know, you're so bad at your job kind of culture. It's very much, let's move forward. I think the other key thing I would always say, and definitely for interviewing, is Amazon loves data and metrics, both the ones that are numerical and are from a dashboard or a report, but also the anecdotal piece of data as well. What are we actually hearing from the people? They might be putting that their job satisfaction is really high, but what are people worried about? What are the bits and pieces, and what do we need to really then dive into? What data will help us inform from those anecdotes? So I think that's the other piece, that metrics, data, and using that day in, day out is always going to be key to being successful at Amazon, and that forms a big part of the culture. That it's not hunches, it's not what I think because I'm the boss, it's the data shows.